Hi everyone, stickyhan here, and today we are looking at the connection between the two Outlast games. If you have played the Outlast series, you may be wondering if there is any connection between the two wildly popular games. On the surface, there doesn't really appear to be one, aside from the similarities of playing an inquisitive character whose prying gets them into rather unsavory positions. But if we look a little deeper, there is a faint breadcrumb trail connecting the two stories. But before we go ahead and dive into that, let's do a brief refresher on our two games. Outlast follows the story of Miles Upshur, a freelance investigative journalist who receives a tip to investigate a remote psychiatric hospital called Mount Massive Asylum, owned by Murkoff Corporation, located deep in the mountains of Lake County, Colorado. Now, upon entering the asylum, Miles pretty much instantly realizes that this was a terrible idea and that he should go from investigating to escaping the asylum. He runs into some pretty unique characters such as Chris Walker, a big guy with some skin issues who stalks you throughout the entirety of the game, Father Martin, who is crazy but otherwise the only person who doesn't wish to murder you, the Naked Twins, who want to play cat and mouse with you and have you for dinner, and of course one can't forget Dr. Traeger, who is actually a Murkoff executive driven insane by his work, thus turning him into a patient. Now the game consists of a lot of hiding, some running, and hitting a crap ton of switches. During his attempt to survive the asylum, Miles learns a lot about what's been going on with the Murkoff Corporation inside the asylum. They've been using the patients as guinea pigs for their morphogenic engine, which controls lucid dreaming in comatose people. Though many of the trials failed, causing the already psychotic patients to become even more unstable, there was one success in Billy Hope. Now, Billy became what is known as the Wall Rider, a malevolent being of nanites being controlled by Billy. Dr. Vernick, who created the morphogenic engine and the Wall Rider, is basically like, oops, and asks Miles to destroy Billy, thus destroying the Wall Rider. But spoiler, the Wall Rider merely takes Miles over as the new host instead. Little crazy, little confusing, but it all works. Great game. Outlast 2 follows the story of Blank Lingerman and Lynn Lingerman, who work together as investigative journalists. The couple head out to rural Arizona to investigate the murder of a young pregnant woman who came from the area. While searching for the community in a helicopter, their plane crashes and Blake wakes up alone in the rural wilderness. He heads out to try and find his wife, stumbling upon the cult community led by Papa Noth, who was not only impregnating the women of his community with his children, but also murdering each one for God. Blake is able to temporarily reunite with his wife, discover she is apparently pregnant, and that basically the cult leader, Papa Noth, wants to murder her because she is carrying the Antichrist, and he soon also meets the heretic leader, Val, who wants to keep the baby alive to bring forth the end of the world. Blake obviously just wants to get his wife and get the heck out of Dodge. Blake makes his way through caves and towns, hiding and running from cult followers and the ever-lovely Marta, a Grim Reaper-looking executioner, before finally reaching heretic territory and doing basically the whole thing all over again, but with monster-looking creatures even more insane than the cultist. Now, after entering and navigating the depths of the mine, Blake finally finds Lynn, whose pregnancy is now seemingly to term. Yeah, like within the expanse of the night, she passes 9 months of pregnancy. It's magical. They manage to escape the mine as the world is seemingly falling apart with a storm of lightning raging. Lynn appears to give birth in a very graphic scene, but before dying, she comments, "There's nothing there." That, alongside the baby's lack of shadow or umbilical cord, leads to believe that the baby is merely a hallucination that Blake is seeing. Now, I know that seems a little confusing, but it kind of ties into our connection, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Anyways, Blake passes out. When he comes to, Papa Noth whines about how he murdered all his children to avoid this, blah blah blah, cuts his own throat. Ouchie. Blake walks through Temple Gate, and if you look closely, you can see that the entire town has poisoned themselves, and as the sun rises, it seemingly grows brighter until Blake is engulfed by the light, seemingly the end of the world, and it ends with him praying with his friend who was murdered in Catholic school. So we've run over our 2 games and we summed up their storylines and spoiled essentially everything. So I hope you have played the games yourselves before watching this video. But the question we are aiming to answer today is, how are they connected? Now, you might have already guessed that the connection is Murkoff Corporation. Maybe, maybe not. That is technically the main corporation. But what really ties the games together? It's actually 2 very small, subtle documents that can be found both in Outlast and Outlast 2. Now, they're 2 different documents, but the documents connect the stories together. Now, in Outlast, there is a note you can find that is called Variant Postmortem. Now, this note is by Jennifer Rowland, who is a pathologist for the Murkoff Corporation, working with Dr. Vernick on the morphogenic project. She basically makes a comment about how she thinks Vernick is crazy and that his theory isn't working, yada yada yada, and she's going to put in another request to leave because she just doesn't want to work with this guy anymore. Alright? So if you look up that note, and then if we pop over to Outlast 2, you find another note called Old Traveler around the lake. Now, this note isn't from Jennifer Rowland, but it specifically mentions her. And essentially, this is in regards to the towers that are found in the mountain region where the cults and the heretics live. Now, this note also indicates how the halfway point between the towers and the subjects and the signal remains strong. So basically, what these 2 little notes do is they confirm the legit connection between Outlast and Outlast 2, because they tie Murkoff together and they tie the stories together. Now, we know exactly what happened in Outlast with the asylum and Murkoff and what they were doing. They were using the patients as subjects for the morphogenic engine. That is all clearly outlined in the story. However, if you're not paying attention in Outlast 2, you could miss this connection. If you don't find these notes, you may not see that there is actually a connection. But what it comes down to is that actually the cult and Temple Gate and the heretics are the subjects. They are the patients in this game, and they are the ones who are also now the new subjects essentially for the morphogenic engine. It is presenting itself a little differently, of course, because it's not quite the same as how they did it in Outlast, but it is essentially the same thing. And you can find further documentation to encourage this. For example, there is a note, Towers of Metal, which indicate it's a letter to Papa Noth, indicating that this gentleman found metal towers that were hidden among the tallest trees, and he said there was a humming coming from there, but as soon as he got close, he began to hallucinate, and all of a sudden he was still walking, and he had lost his way when he came to. So that kind of confirms essentially that there were some towers out there, basically, which is the base for the Murkoff Corporation. Now, it's a little bit of a theory, but I would say for sure the Variant Postmortem and the Old Traveler connect the 2 stories through Jennifer Rowland. She is a concrete person who is directly tied to Murkoff Corporation in the first game, and then is found in this note in the second game. So that is your connection. That is how it all works. There are some more detailed videos out on YouTube discussing kind of how the cult, game aspect of it is actually a part of Murkoff's new experiment and everything that go into it a little better, and I will allow them to do that. But I just kind of wanted to point out that actual connection by showing you guys these 2 aspects. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you found it interesting, please go ahead and hit that like button, and of course be sure to follow and subscribe so you can stay in the loop for all of my future content. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time.